Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net. And today I want to tell you a little bit about my own spiritual journey. Alright, so over the past several weeks I've been having a few reservations about how I've been sharing the insights that I share on my channel. And I want to make sure that I'm sharing them in the way that's going to be most beneficial for you guys. And so for me, I think so far I've been coming up and kind of giving you guys insights like I'm the one that has them and I'm just giving them to you. And in a sense, I have worked through a lot of things and insights have come to me, and I've also studied into various spiritual teachers and things like that. But I want to make it clear that I am by no means an enlightened person, and I don't at all consider myself a guru or even really a teacher. Really, I'm just a student on the path myself. And so I figured that it would be helpful if I kind of continue to give you insights and things like that, but also kind of wove in my own spiritual background just in terms of how I got to the place where I am now. So I'll start back from when I was a small child, and I was raised in a secular home. You know, spirituality wasn't really condemned or exalted. I wasn't raised having a particular religion. And I really think that this was actually very, very beneficial for me because it gave me kind of a state of openness to kind of explore and ask a lot of existential questions for myself so that I could ask, oh, how did we get here? You know, where do we come from? How is all this working? You know, instead of having a story there, you know, I was essentially able to contemplate and have that story. And so even when I was a child, before I knew any concepts of spirituality at all, I would, you know, when I was alone, just be thinking about the nature of things. And I remember being like 4 years old and just wondering like how time moved. And, you know, I was thinking that it was kind of like, you know, you could, like every single second was like an eternity in itself. And I would just imagine that, like, you know, as you would walk a step, you would never know if like time was paused and then a million years would pass. And I just remember having that thought and, you know, just trying to find what exactly was the present moment. And then I also remember noticing that my thoughts didn't stop. And I would be like, oh, can I stop them? I'm going to stop them now. And I thought I was a really strange person for that because I had assumed that everybody else's thoughts stopped and that I was like this weird person that thoughts did not stop. And so it was funny to find later on, once I actually got into spirituality, that these things were actually deconstructive things that people who are seeking enlightenment would actually be looking into and contemplating on to essentially get there and to see through the illusion. So I grew up in a small town called Inverness where everyone's fairly conservative and, you know, has a very particular idea about the way things work. And, you know, it's a pretty religious community, like not openly, but, you know, most everyone held religious faith, usually Christian. And so going into my teen years, I had, given the fact that I was doing this contemplation work and, you know, really questioning a lot of existential questions, you know, and I would look and I would see my peers as a teenager really kind of sucked into this religion thing. I'm like, ugh, you know, like, and I never wanted to be like that. And so I kind of separated myself from that, and I decided that I was agnostic, very much leaning atheist. I highly doubted that God existed, and I related it to people who I saw who weren't necessarily following their religion in the strictest sense. Like, you know, they would do a lot of things that were against the Christianity, and then also, you know, just noticing that there were so many holes in their worldview. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be like that. And so I was pretty much agnostic, leaning atheist. And but prior to that, I had a very strong ego. I had a very, very set worldview. And ironically, open-mindedness was part of my worldview, but it was anything but open-minded. I was very dogmatic. I had like a lot of very, very strongly held opinions. And I was very addicted to success and achievement and trying to be my best. And I really felt that I was on a path towards self-actualization. In a sense I was, and in a sense I was not. And so when I took down my ego, and it was a very gradual process, and then I realized, oh my goodness, I'm sacrificing my entire self and running on a hamster wheel and trying to achieve significance for a self-concept. The thing that I had thought as me and really thought was my true identity, and the things that I had been identifying with were false. And so basically, because the things I was identifying with were false, I was doing so much work and really exerting myself for something that didn't exist. It was a really heavy nothing to carry around. And so because all of that fell away, and basically I no longer had a separate sense of self to protect, all fear left me. And all of these traits that I had disowned over the course of my childhood and over the course of my teenhood just started bubbling back up to the surface effortlessly. And I could feel my emotions so much stronger than I had, because I was very stoic before. Stoicism was part of my self-concept, and so I didn't want to show emotions, and I would not let myself necessarily feel emotions. And then all of a sudden it was almost like just this beautiful work of art that was going on in my body, my emotional feeling reactions. And it was a beautiful experience. And I recognized that this sense of separateness that I had been feeling with the rest of everything else, and worrying about my own significance and worrying about death, and just constantly being caught up in those neurotic fears that I had been caught up in, were an outgrowth of having too strong of a self-concept. My ego was strong, and I did not even know it. I thought that I was a humble person. And I felt this deep sense of connectedness, and I knew then that I was experiencing the phenomenon that religions had been trying to describe as God or Allah or any other religion, really attempts to describe this thing. And the thing itself is so complex and it's so big that words could never describe it. Even the words that I'm giving you now, really don't describe it at all. And even the fact all I have is a memory of that experience. And so it's just another thought story now. But this was enough to get me on the spiritual path and really drive me forward in that direction. And so after I had had that experience and realized that I was sacrificing so much of myself for a self-concept, I wanted to go in the exact opposite direction. And here's where I made a ton of mistakes that I'm still basically after and I went back to life, realizing that all of my achievement was basically an addiction in order to distract myself from death, trying to outrun the rebirth. And so I thought, oh, well, let me just not achieve high. Let me just keep because I was in college at the time and I needed to get a certain GPA to keep my scholarships and things like that. So it's I'll try to make really crappy work now, and I'll not engage in that ego game that I've been engaging in. And so because I was a fine arts major, I could pretty much make this into an art project and still kind of get along in a way. And so I ended up just doing a lot of really crazy performance art pieces and some really objectively ugly artwork, just trying to bring down my ego's identification with doing well. And so my grades dropped a bit, and some of it was on purpose and some of it was on accident, and it was just murdering my ego. It felt so bad and so wrong to me, but I was essentially tearing myself in two opposite directions. So I had one foot in life and one foot out of life, because basically when you transcend your ego, it is kind of like dying before you are actually dead. And so you can live the rest of your life without fear of death and, without all the egoic concerns. And you can, in that way, act from a place of true inspiration. What do you really want? Kind of like a child goes to the playground and plays with toys, doesn't necessarily have a reason other than to have fun. And for an enlightened person, that's their reason for doing anything. And so for me, I had I had an attachment to my ego, but then I also had an attachment to my idea of what would bring me back to that enlightened state. And so for years, I was really pulling in two opposite directions, not allowing myself to think any positive thoughts about myself and not really having the strength to not think negative thoughts. And so in many ways, like, it really brought me into a state of depression. Like, I went from being an ego with a really, really strong ego to an adult with a really, really weak ego. And the thing with having a weak ego is that it's not good. It's not a good thing. Basically, you want to transcend a strong ego when you're seeking enlightenment. You don't want to weaken the ego at all, because then you're never going to be able to transcend it. So over the past, I would say 2-3 years, since I've been doing a lot of personal development and research into different things, that's what's been enabling me to kind of build myself back up. Because for years after that experience, I was really, really down, and I was trying all kinds of like counterintuitive things, and I'm sure that a ton of people thought that I was absolutely crazy, So one of the things that I did that was really terrible for me was, because I felt boundless during the experience, I sought to have no boundaries. And so, I was also 20. I was in a relatively new town to me. And, so I thought, oh, I'm just going to take down all my boundaries, and I'm not going to worry about my own personal safety or setting things down at all. And then some like really terrible things come from that. Like, do not ever take down your boundaries. You want to set healthy boundaries. It's one of the paradoxes of this work, is that, on one hand, you want to recognize your boundlessness and recognize that you're constantly moving toward expansion, but also you want to make sure that you're keeping yourself safe, because you're also a separate individual. So I just made a lot of terrible blunders, and basically only in the past couple years have I really been actively building my ego back up in hopes of actually going and transcending it. So I mean in earnest when I say that my goal is spiritual enlightenment. And if anybody who's watching this is pursuing spiritual enlightenment, I use scare quotes because it's like a non-goal goal. You cannot set a goal to get there. It's just a breakthrough that happens. And so since I had that first experience, and then I also did that, because if you've had a taste of enlightenment before, you would know that it's just the most marvelous, magnificent, and subtle experience that you could possibly be living. And it's just a realization of your authentic being. And so in a sense, no religion will actually get you there. It's actually unlearning things that get you there. So where I'm at, I'm in the process of unlearning, and I'm in the process of trying to detach myself from my identity as Emerald Wilkins, but also paradoxically, I need to make Emerald Wilkins a really, really strong individual. You see, so that's where I'm at in my spiritual journey. So I want to make sure that you guys know that when I share my insights, it's not like I'm this like super Buddha, Lao Tzu kind of person, and I'm also not some person who is just, just saying stuff. These are things that I've really had to gnaw away at, and things that have just come to me throughout my process of, like contemplation and deconstruction over the years, and then also just dealing with the ups and downs on the spiritual path and in practical life. And so for me, what I want with this channel is I want to share with you things that have helped me. And I'm hoping that some people will get great value out of it too. Like, I want to be able to help people, but I do recognize that some people just are either further back on the path or higher up on the path, and this particular channel may or may not resonate with you. But for people who are maybe experiencing the similar things to what I've experienced, I think that this channel is really, really great for that, because there are things that I know now that if somebody would have told me back then, it would have saved me so much heartbreak and so much depression and so much just craziness, really. And so That's my hope with this channel, is to share with you what's helped me. And if it resonates with you, then that's cool. And if it doesn't, then that's cool too, because I'm sure that there's other teachers out there that will help you. But ultimately, I don't really consider myself a teacher, because it feels like at this point, I'm really a student, you know? And I think, you know, that might be true of every single person on the planet. Everyone's really a student, and everyone could possibly be a teacher too. And so, you know, I just want to share with you my experiences and my insights as authentically as I possibly can, and I hope that they help somebody. And if they do, you know, just let me know, and I'll be pleased as punch about that. So that's about where I'm at. Like, I'm still dealing with negative self-talk, I'm still dealing with self-doubt, and I'm still not completely free of the illusion of ego. You know, I've had those experiences, and so I know that the way that I am now and the way I was then are very contrasting paradigms of thought. And enlightenment is an entirely different perspective through which to look at the world. And I am not there yet. So I'm not an enlightened person, but I do feel like I'm on the right track. And I'm going to share with you my progress as openly and honestly as I can, so that you guys can kind of come on the journey with me. And so that's my hope with this channel, to bring you guys on my spiritual journey with me, and to share with you my insights, my ups, my downs, and just really put my soul out there for you guys to see. But that's all I have for now, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you're more interested in my personal journey, you can also check out my blog at thediamondnet.org. There I just go in a little bit more in depth with like just very personal topics for me. And my videos, I'm going to try to start weaving in more personal anecdotes and stories and things like that too. But there, you know, that's mostly just me struggling and, you know, just kind of working through all these issues and trying to progress further on the path. And so if you like this video, go ahead and click the like button and hit the subscribe button below. And other than that, until next time, keep becoming more you.